The schoolyard buzzed with the usual after-class chatter, but near the far fence, a sharper sound cut through mocking laughter. 12-year-old Ethan gripped the wheels of his chair tighter, wishing he could disappear as three older boys circled like restless wolves. Their taunts echoed off the brick walls, cruel and sharp, while the late afternoon sun threw long, menacing shadows across the cracked pavement. Just beyond the gates, a sleek black car idled, the billionaire father inside checking messages, unaware of the storm gathering a few yards away. Then, from across the yard, a sudden voice rang out steady, fierce, impossible to ignore. A tall black girl strode toward them, her sneakers striking the pavement like drumbeats of defiance. The bullies paused, startled. She didn't slow. "Leave him alone," she said, each word slicing through the air. No one knew it yet, but this single act of courage was about to change all their lives forever. David Harrington had built his fortune on bold moves and restless ambition. At 45, the tech billionaire commanded boardrooms and headlines with equal ease, yet the quiet moments of fatherhood often left him feeling powerless. His son, Ethan, born with a spinal condition that limited mobility, was the center of his world, but also the source of David's deepest worry. Every morning, he watched Ethan wheel through the gates of Willow Creek Middle School with a careful smile, knowing that behind those confident hazel eyes hid the ache of being different. David tried to give Ethan everything money could buy: a custom wheelchair with sleek carbon fiber rims, private physical therapy, the best tutors. But he couldn't buy acceptance from classmates who whispered or stared. A discreet driver dropped Ethan off each day while David juggled investor calls, promising himself he'd be more present tomorrow. Across town, 14-year-old Maya Thompson navigated a very different world. The daughter of a city bus driver and a hospital nurse, she'd learned early how to hold her ground. Sharp-witted and fiercely loyal, Maya carried a quiet strength that drew friends to her, and sometimes drew the wrong kind of attention from kids who liked to test boundaries. She'd seen Ethan in the halls, moving with that practiced independence that hides loneliness. She'd also noticed the subtle cruelty some classmates thought went unnoticed. A chair moved just out of reach, a whispered insult as they passed. On the day everything shifted, David's schedule was packed back-to-back meetings and a late conference call, but something tugged at him to pick Ethan up himself. He arrived early, settling into the back seat of his Blacktown car with a view of the courtyard. Sunlight flickered through the trees as he glanced at his watch, expecting a routine end to the school day. What he didn't see, yet, was the group of boys shadowing Ethan near the far fence. Their laughter carried across the yard, light at first, then sharp. Nor could he hear Maya's footsteps quicken as she spotted the forming circle. But the moment was coming, rushing toward them all, when a teenager's courage would collide with a father's long-hidden fear, and a billionaire's understanding of true worth would change. Forever, the courtyard emptied in uneven waves as students scattered toward buses and parents' cars. But Ethan lingered near the chain-link fence, adjusting the small backpack hooked to the back of his chair. He liked the quiet after the final bell, the brief pause before the driver usually arrived. Today, though, the familiar hum of conversation faded into a low snicker. "Hey, speed racer," a voice drawled. Ethan stiffened. 3 8th graders, Brady, Cole, and Mason, strode from behind a cluster of shrubs. They were older, taller, their shadows long in the golden light. Brady, the ringleader with a perpetual smirk, kicked a pebble toward Ethan's front wheel. "Where's the pit crew? Bet you can't even roll straight without help." Ethan tried to angle his chair toward the main walkway, but Cole darted in front, blocking the path. Mason circled behind, the squeak of his sneakers loud against the pavement. "What's the rush?" Cole teased. "Stay a while." A familiar burn crept into Ethan's chest, a mix of anger and the helplessness he hated. He'd heard worse, but something about their easy laughter, considered shouting for a teacher, but the courtyard was nearly empty. Across the yard, Maya closed her locker and stepped into the fading sunlight. She spotted the cluster immediately. Ethan hemmed in, the older boy's posture unmistakable. She'd seen enough playground showdowns to know where this was headed. Her pulse quickened. She could walk away. It wasn't her problem. But that thought barely flickered before she was moving, sneakers slapping against the pavement. "Back off," she called, her voice carrying farther than she expected. The boys turned. Brady's grin faltered at the sight of her striding toward them, eyes fierce beneath a curtain of braids. "Look who's here, hero of the day," he sneered, trying to recover. "I said back off," Maya repeated, planting herself between Ethan and the boys. Her stance radiated a calm authority she didn't fully feel. Cole laughed. "We're just talking." "Then talk somewhere else," she shot back. For a moment, silence hung like a held breath. Brady glanced at his friends, weighing their next move. Something in Maya's unflinching gaze made him scowl. "Whatever," he muttered, kicking the fence. "Not worth it." One by one they peeled away, muttering insults that dissolved into the evening air. Ethan exhaled, only now realizing how tightly he'd gripped his wheels. "Thanks," he said quietly. "You okay?" Maya asked, her voice softening. He nodded, but his eyes glistened. "Yeah, just thanks." From the car, David Harrington had witnessed every second. At first he'd sat frozen, disbelief rooting him to the seat as he saw his son surrounded. He was halfway out the door when Maya appeared, a whirlwind of courage in sneakers and resolve. Now, watching her steady Ethan, David felt a rush of emotions he couldn't name: gratitude, shame, admiration. The driver glanced back. "Sir?" "Give me a minute," David said, his eyes never leaving the pair. As the bullies disappeared, Maya knelt beside Ethan's chair, checking the straps on his bag as if to confirm he was unharmed. Their conversation was quiet, but David could sense the connection forming, something beyond a fleeting act of kindness. He stepped from the car, the late sun painting the asphalt gold. Ethan noticed first, eyes widening. "Dad?" David approached slowly, taking in the scene. The brave girl, his resilient son. The empty courtyard still vibrating with tension. He knelt to Ethan's level, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. "You all right, buddy?" Ethan nodded. "I'm fine. Thanks to her." He looked toward Maya. David met her gaze, a silent exchange of respect passing between them. "I owe you a thank you," he said. "What's your name?" "Maya," she replied, a hint of nerves creeping into her confident posture. "Well, Maya," David said, his voice warm, "you may have just restored my faith in people." She offered a modest shrug, but a small smile tugged at her lips. Someone had to do it. In that moment, David felt something shift. He had spent years building empires, guarding assets, believing wealth could shield his son from pain. Yet here was a teenager with no fortune, no corporate empire, just fearless heart, and she had done what all his resources could not. As dusk deepened, David found himself inviting Maya to join them for dinner. It was impulsive, but the thought of letting this encounter end at the school gates felt wrong. To his quiet relief, she agreed. As twilight deepened over the city, David guided his sleek black sedan through tree-lined streets, Ethan chatting softly in the backseat while Maya sat beside him, still a little shy but curious. The restaurant he chose wasn't one of his usual exclusive haunts, but a cozy, warmly lit bistro where the scent of rosemary and baked bread drifted through the air. Inside, a corner booth welcomed them, flickering candles casting soft halos of light. For a while, the conversation stayed simple: favorite subjects at school, Ethan's love of astronomy, Maya's weekend basketball games, but David found himself listening more than speaking, watching the way his son's face lit with excitement and how Maya's easy laughter brought a sparkle he hadn't seen in Ethan for months. He realized with a pang that his boy felt more at ease with this brave stranger than with many of the adults who surrounded them at endless charity galas and corporate events. As plates of roasted chicken and vegetables arrived, David asked gentle questions about Maya's life. She explained that her mother worked double shifts as a nurse, and her grandmother helped care for her younger siblings. Money was tight, but she said it without self-pity, focusing instead on her love for art and her dream of designing murals for city buildings. David listened, struck by her quiet resilience. He thought of his own boardrooms, the polite but distant conversations about profit margins, and felt a sudden hollowness when Ethan excused himself to the restroom. David leaned closer to Maya. "You know, you didn't have to step in today," he said. Most people would have looked the other way. Maya met his gaze steadily. "Maybe," she said, "but I couldn't just watch someone get hurt. My mom always says silence helps the bully." Her words landed like a stone in his chest, echoing against memories of deals closed and conflicts ignored in his own life. Later, as they walked to the car beneath a sky streaked with indigo and the first stars, David felt a decision crystallizing something far larger than a single evening. He offered to drive Maya home, and during the quiet ride she shared more. How she painted late at night after finishing homework. How she sometimes doubted whether her art would ever matter. David listened, an idea taking root. At her doorstep he turned to her. "Maya," he said, "your courage today. It reminded me what real strength looks like. I run a foundation for youth programs. If you're interested, I'd like to sponsor an art initiative at your school, and I'd love for you to lead it." Her eyes widened, caught between surprise and hope. "Me? But you're exactly the kind of leader kids need." He interrupted gently. The next weeks unfolded like a quiet transformation. With David's resources and Maya's creativity, a mural project bloomed on the school's blank exterior wall. Students from every grade joined in, even some who had once stood on the sidelines when bullying flared. The first strokes of color turned into a riot of blues and golds, telling a story of unity and resilience. Ethan, beaming in his wheelchair, helped paint constellations that stretched across the top. A galaxy of belonging on the day the mural was unveiled. The courtyard brimmed with parents, teachers, and children. David stood off to the side, watching as Maya addressed the crowd with calm confidence. "This isn't just art," she said, her voice clear. "It's a promise that we'll look out for one another." Applause rippled through the warm afternoon air. Ethan wheeled forward to present her with a bouquet, and the crowd erupted into cheers. As the sun dipped low, David felt something settle in his heart, a recognition that real wealth was measured not in the height of skyscrapers, but in the courage of a young girl who refused to stay silent. He looked at Maya, at his son laughing among new friends, and knew that this single act of bravery had redrawn the boundaries of their lives.